Welcome back to Disinfo Watch. We are going to go in depth now with an extended conversation with Nick Muller, who we spoke with in our last episode. He's been doing a tremendous amount of work on a regular basis on fact-checking. He's also a freelance journalist who is a regular contributor to the Diplomat and many other publications, and a very trusted voice in this sphere. And so, Nick, we're really happy to have you back with us. So we wanted to dive in a little deeper to some particulars. The last time we spoke, it was really centered around kind of a much more of a broad stroke of NIS and disinfo and the impact it has and the dystopian nightmare that we kind of feel like we're living in now. So we wanted to maybe see some examples of what that really looks like in real time and how this information impacts the real world. It's not just happening in a bubble online. It really breaks across into reality. So
everywhere.
Rasheed's got a topic he'd love to pick your brain on.
Yeah, I saw this story in Deutsche Welle. How to pronounce it?
Deutsche Welle.
All right, cool. Deutsche Welle. There are some I think in February, and a plane landed in Berlin with 155 Afghans. And there was a story went viral saying that the new government broke the deal, and now they are bringing more immigrants to Germany. And then the fact checkers there, they said, first of all, there is no new government. It's still the previous one. How in the hell did you bring a new government? And also that was the deal from 2022 when the Taliban took over. So Germany has signed to get 45,000 Afghans. So that's the airplane. It's not new. They were already approved before Germany now signed the new rules of we don't want new refugees and stuff. But that story went, really viral, and people start getting upset and posting stuff. But it was all a huge lie. Nobody really checked. They just saw 155 and they were like, okay, we're gonna blame the government, even though they want this government to block the refugees, but the first thing they saw, they're like, okay, we're going to blame them there. So this is what happened, yeah. What do you think?
What do I think about what exactly?
This story, and because you're also in Berlin, in Germany, so how can something like this become so big and affect so many people and go viral?
Well, there have been several attacks, I guess, over the last couple of years, or not several, 3 or 4. One in Solingen in the western part of Germany, which was a knife attack. And then after that, then there were far-right groups who were spreading a lot of false claims about Muslim migrants in general. And then, it led to a lot of, it actually led to a lot of hate crimes against people of color in different parts of Germany, and rise in Islamophobia, and a lot of these things were obviously really highlighted by the far right party, the AfD. But yeah, right before the election, then there was, as far as I remember, I'm trying to remember, but there was a car attack by a young Afghan man, and this was just a few days before the election. And yeah, so I think that these different attacks, they obviously are taken out of context, and yeah, immigrant communities, especially Afghans and Syrians, have really borne the brunt of that, and there have been quick calls for removals, deportations, by not only the far right, but also by the government, who has now just started today, this in CDU. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that these innocent people are getting killed by these random acts of violence in public spaces is obviously disgusting, and society needs to protect against it. And it's really creepy, honestly, to walk around Berlin or London, and you can see these physical structures they're putting on around these public common areas where the Christmas markets will be, and they're deliberately designed on the bridges to stop people from driving into people, and that's just kind of terrifying to know that that's a normal thing, or You think about school shootings or shootings in public spaces and events in America, and it's just like, it's really, really terrifying. But I think, to answer your question, is like really connected to the idea of how it's reported in the media. And I know that it's every article about the one that happened right before the young Afghan who did this and drove a car into a group of people right before the election. It was almost like days before the election. Every article led with Afghan asylum seeker. It didn't lead with a man drove a vehicle or a vehicle was driven into a group of people. It led with his ethnicity. It led with his legal status. It led, and so it's embedded in your brain that every Afghan or every asylum seeker or every refugee is somehow now guilty of this crime, along with just in public opinion or just like subconsciously.
It's an attack on everyone,
right? And then if you flip that back over to like what happens when there are, what were my numbers? It's insane. 28,945 total right-wing crimes in Germany in 2023 alone.
Holy.
28,945. Anti-Semitic crimes were packed in here. Anti-Muslim crimes are packed in here with a 12% increase. It's nuts. 2024, another 5,000 just off the preliminary data from the beginning of the year. And it's like, we don't hear German citizen attacks mosque. You know what I mean? Like, we don't hear this like type of like packaging of like.
It's always a crazy person. It just
then
one person.
Then it becomes like, oh, that was a mentally disturbed individual who acted on their own, and this is not a whole group of people. And it's like, it's kind of nuts. Like when you see this, but I wonder how this could flip around if the media, and when we say the media, I mean like throughout like this is also all of the quote unquote mainstream media that the far right is now like lining up against and trying to vilify, as you were saying in the previous episode. What does it look like if these headlines are modified? What does it look like if this reporting is shifted to just report the pure facts? I wonder what it would sound like if it was an AI headline that extracted this bias from it and just, or would the AI be already so biased in its like structure that it would just assume that a person driving a car into a group of people would have had to be a outsider with uncertain legal status. I don't know. Like, what do you think it would look like if some of that bias was extracted from the headline structures?
I don't think it's happening across the board in German media outlets, but obviously there are differences in terms of let's say the ethics of reporting. So I don't think that like Spiegel and Süddeutsche Zeitung and outlets like that, I think they're fairly careful in terms of. I was following this event because I did a story actually about Afghan asylum seekers who are feeling very vulnerable in Germany. But yeah, like obviously outlets like Bild, they not only are the most popular newspaper in Germany now, but also they have very, let's say, very savvy social media presence. So I think that these things go hand in hand with the way that they conduct their kind of journalism. And in terms of writing headlines, yeah, I don't know. I mean, what I know in terms of when I do a story, often the person who writes the headline doesn't necessarily write the story. So I think that's sometimes what a lot of people who are reading, they sometimes come to those conclusions that like that journalist is trying to do this or that and trying to influence the conversation, but often these processes are quite separate. So maybe the solution is just to find better headline writers. I don't know.
It just
because I feel like
yeah.
Go ahead.
It's just scary that just a random person with a page on Instagram can start something like that. Just maybe he heard something and then start connecting dots. Oh, Afghans, all right. They are bringing them here. Nothing else. Just serving as if, you already have your goal and then you're trying to find evidence. So he already hates immigrants, Afghans, whatever. And he just, okay, I saw this. I'm going to flip it around in my benefit so I can, attack someone. This is just crazy, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we see this happening in a real, it bridges right into reality with, if that's just an individual who doesn't necessarily have a huge following, but then somehow
Yeah.
these algorithms like promote that type of post in a way that reaches a larger audience. I don't know. In some ways, we would like to talk to those people and find out what do they do to make it happen, because we would like to see our posts reach more of an
Yeah.
audience, and it sort of doesn't seem to happen when you're not sensationalizing some sort of lie or hate or anger or frustration. And maybe we should start changing our headlines. Maybe we should start having some clickbaity things that lie to get everyone to click on it, and then it turns out that, no, gotcha, duped you. And a little bait and switch. But Nick, I mean, we've been talking a lot and sharing articles along the way about things that are happening in the political sphere in the States and why are we where we are today. And there were a couple of pieces that you recently referenced that, do you want to like elaborate a little bit on a little further elaboration on like the lack of how we got to a place where we don't trust what we were saying, mainstream media? And then what does a low info voter mean? And how did these kind of paths like converge and give us what we have today?
Well, I'll start with the New York article. I think that when I was trying to understand what was going on in the election and then what happened afterwards, I think this was one of the best stories which I really came across. It sort of connected the issue of disinformation with people's limited access to accurate information, and also like how such a big amount of the population just lacked this sort of basic media literacy, and that made them really become like even more susceptible to misinformation. And yeah, I think that there are big portions of the U.S. which are just super disconnected from each other, and um, and yeah, this vulnerability, this uncertainty, this powerlessness that a lot of people feel, that they just are like stuck in a rut, and they're looking for someone to blame, and then certain figures come along like Donald Trump, and they sort of offer easy answers. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't think that before he came along, we had a central figure who was just constantly berating the media and constantly trying to erode trust in these media institutions. And so I think that once he became the candidate in 2016, this sort of like just opened the Pandora's box of like, let's not like basically let's allow like anyone's sort of outrageous opinions, whether it's I mean, if you remember how Trump came to prominence in the very beginning, was saying that Obama was a Muslim from Kenya. And back in 2015 or 2014, whenever it happened, this was sort of outrageous. But the fact that that wasn't sort of shut down or really like heavily sort of, let's say, combated, it's sort of, yeah, it's just sort of opened the whole Pandora's box in terms of allowing just like alternative facts just to run wild. And so yeah, this story goes through like basically yeah, it's quite a long piece, but basically just going through the systemic sort of weakening of the media institutions, the like the way that it goes through, also the way through how it spreads through like social media, memes, and AI generated content, and yeah, basically it all sort of came together this second time, even better than the first time. Uh, these political narratives which were already circulating, especially on either alternative media websites or on social media, which just really created an alternate reality, which I think before Donald Trump really only existed on Fox, and now we have like hundreds of them online who amplify those core messages. And also there are like 4 or 5 different outlets in the US now which amplify Trump's message even more than Fox. So you have like One American Network. News Nation is sort of ununderstandable what the political bend of that is, but really like a whole right wing media ecosystem which is completely separate from let's say mainstream reporting from the New York Times, NBC, the Washington Post. So yeah, there's just there's this just lack of baseline of facts now that has led to the situation.
Yeah, I thought the interesting thing in the article for me was that I don't know, I think everybody keeps giving Trump some sort of like the king of novelty, like that he's like created everything, but actually he didn't. He's just kind of grifting off of everyone else from the past. Like they're talking a lot in this article. It's Allison Phillips, the writer, like about Nixon doing the same thing, and the silent majority is basically the same playbook as what's going on here. That like this elite person is representing the average individual, small person, and actually back then you had just as many kind of voices and owners coming out with content because you had so many more newspapers, because there's so much more local journalism. There's so much more, you had thousands of papers and thousands of owners. And then over the course of time, all of this has been consolidated down to where you only have like, a handful of owners, and so much local journalism has been killed. And they're kind of, did they just benefit from the advent of technology, the change? Like, is it just that the strategies that were being deployed before are now just having a bigger impact, an exponential impact, because it's just so much easier to reach so many more people so quickly? And what does this look like, how it connects to that New Yorker piece about the low info voter?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for it, to be honest, because there are several, like I think everybody is trying to find a clear explanation for how this all happened, but I think it's a bunch of different factors which all came together very well. And but I think the turning point for a lot of people was probably COVID, and this really radicalized a lot of people who really were following, let's say, pretty normal information before, and then whether they were angry or whatever happened, it really created like a lot of disaffected people who were looking just for an easy answer to very complicated problems. So whether that's someone online or whether it's a politician, I think this isolation like really probably amplified a lot of people's conspiratorial sort of maybe tendencies. Maybe everyone has them, I don't know, but I think that was probably sort of the breaking point, because a lot of people were sitting on their devices for long periods of time without much social interaction.
What really always, when I think about people who support Trump, and I don't want to call them idiots, but it's really stupid way of thinking, because just that someone came out and said you are fake news doesn't mean that he's saying the truth. I mean, we don't see this in our normal life. You cannot have a conversation or an argument with someone and he said you're lying. Doesn't make him or her telling the truth. I don't know how they just made him, I don't know, the president of the truth, and whatever he says, it's coming from God. I don't know. And I saw lately that UFC ex-champion McGregor from Ireland following the same path. And now he wants to be the president. Just, I think 2 months ago, he was accused of rape and he had to pay so much money. And everybody left him, even the UFC. They were like, we don't want to talk about him. Now he wants to be the president. The first thing he did, blaming immigrants. The first thing. we need to save this. We need to save. And he went to the White House. And he met Trump, and I was like, wow, like the pieces are just going together. It's like the Avengers, but the evil ones. I don't know what's going on, really. I'm like, oh my God, yeah. Oof.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what his campaign slogan is?
What?
Just take a guess.
No, I don't want to.
It's just make Ireland great again.
Oh my God,
like
really?
They're not even like trying to, but like,
is he gonna change
but Trump
the
wasn't
name?
the first one who did it either. I mean, Orban did this, Erdogan did this kind of stuff. Like, they're just grabbing the same kind of playbook. It's kind of unbelievable. The thing in the second article, the New Yorker piece that I really thought was interesting was about the professor at the University of Alabama who did this, like, political science professor did this, like, research about, like, psychological impact of people and how they behave, and it was all based off of the way that people were commenting on each other's posts, and someone would put out like kind of like a misinformation post. They weren't deliberately deceiving people. They weren't lying online. They were just kind of like amplifying some shit they saw on a meme channel or something. And then there were these quotes of like when someone would call them out on it and try to correct them, they'd say, this one person's like, I think this person is wonderful, but I think they go directly to the source of information. He then suggests that was not the right approach. I just use common sense. He's like, I don't trust any media, nor Google, nor Facebook, and I don't know why my friends immediately go to fact checks. They go to fact resources. He's like, they don't believe it, right? He's like, I trust what I see. And her comment was like, she didn't know whether to do, laugh or cry, and it was just like this. If I'd be electing, she's like, I'd be electing my cat if I only if I only trusted what I saw. It's like, and then in this guy Richard Fording, he did this work, and he said that there was this particular psychological metric. They would ask people these questions, and one of the questions was a need for what they call a need for cognition, and they have a scale, and they would ask people questions about is thinking. The question was, thinking is not my idea of fun. And it was agree or disagree.
Not my idea.
Right? And then they did a correlation of it. And everybody who said they disagree with this, that agreed with this, that thinking is not fun, everyone who agreed with that voted for Trump. Almost all of them. It was like an overwhelming majority of people who said they agree with that statement. Like, I don't want to think because that's not fun. They voted for him.
But how to not think? I don't know. I cannot even ask a question like, how in the hell, like, you don't think, like, what is this?
It was just the idea that saying, like, and there was also a correlation between people who voted for Biden read newspapers, watched network news, watched online news, went to online news sites like the ones that Nick was referencing, saying like trusted sources, or that everyone, the mainstream media that they're trying to tear down and say they're liars. And everybody that voted for Trump or had huge leads that went in his direction, social media, cable news, and YouTube. And what do those three things have in common? Short information, super fast. Like we were talking today about what do we have to do for our social media as an organization, and it was all about nothing longer than a minute, 15 seconds, 30 seconds max. Don't put anything longer, because if you do, no one's going to watch it. No one's going to. And then we even take this episode and we'll chop it up into tons of bits, and then we'll get all our engagement off of those tons of bits.
And there are still some people who will not watch even those.
Yeah, but we see thousands of people like jump onto those 30 second, 1 minute, 15-second bits, and then it's sad when you compare that to interesting conversations aren't fully digested. You just get this one little soundbite, and then that has a
and they run with it and they make
something
big. Yeah.
Right?
All right, what do you have for us?
For mine was like it totally connected to the stuff that Nick was saying earlier, and then how does it bridge into real danger in reality? Like how does this impact real lives? And so you had the situation in Southport last year where these little girls at this Taylor Swift dance class in the summer were killed. And when they brought this out, within maybe hours, there were these crazy far right, people that came in off of the belief that a migrant asylum seeker who arrived on a boat named Ali al-Shakati did this, right? And that he was a Muslim, he was a refugee, asylum seeker, and that he was this. Right. and none of this was true, and it was aggressively amplified by people like Andrew Tate and Tommy Robinson and Farage and all of these voices in the UK. And they said all sorts of crazy shit, and then you had 5 days of madness and riots and people attacking hotels where people were living and burning shit, and 111 people were arrested, 27 officers were taken to the hospital, they were getting attacked by their own citizens. And when you unpack it, it was like, this person doesn't exist. Ali al-Shakati doesn't exist. He's not a human being. He's not a real person. And the person who did do it was a born UK citizen. But the way that the police they all started getting really, really attacked over the lack of information that they provided. And maybe that connects a little bit to what, Nick, you were saying about COVID being this turning point, because this was a confusing time for people and they didn't have information and they didn't know what was going on. And in that vacuum, lots of, bad faith actors fill the void and then profit off of it. But even when they did say it, this is the way originally they were trying to say. The authorities' official statement was that a 17-year-old male from Bank St. Lancaster, originally from Cardiff, saying he was the suspect. But because this person was a minor, they couldn't release the name legally, right? Oh. So they don't put the name out, and then these other people just show up and stick a name in there, and then everybody freaked out and started using it. Then they changed it and said that the person was born in Cardiff 2 hours later. Then they later on included that he had parents of Christian background and that he was the family was from Rwanda originally, but he was born there. But the idea around this was that they led with black. Well, I'm sorry. The solution was that they should have said that the assailant was a 17-year-old male who is black, British, born in Wales, and has lived in the UK his whole life. But they started with black, right? Again, it was similar to this Afghan thing. Like they started with already kind of jamming people up with a certain perception in their mind about who is the danger. And that's just fucking bullshit. Like, that's ridiculous. But this was the solution. This was the independent kind of reviewer who said that you did a wrong job here. You should have released information differently, faster, in this way. And then, so they're basically blaming the police department for doing this, right? That they're the reason why the riots happened. I just thought it was pretty disgusting to me. But you referenced Tate and Robinson along the way in some other pieces. And, what do you think we're supposed to do against these type of bad faith actors? What should be a societal consequence for people who do this, and it's so blatantly obvious and they seem to be getting away with it?
Oh, I guess, if you have kids, you can warn them that if they come across these certain accounts that you shouldn't watch them, I guess. But yeah, this is a very big question because people like Andrew Tate and Tommy Robinson are amplified on certain accounts, and the way that a lot of these things are spread is that even if it's not on the primary account, then it's spread to other accounts, and then it's everywhere. So that's what's so hard about content moderation, even if you have the best intentions to really remove content and have enough people to go through this content, because it's actually very, as you've probably seen the reports in the past, whoever has to go through this actual content moderation, it's really traumatic stuff. And so maybe they can use more AI, I think, to filter through these things, but you still need a human element to go through this kind of really violent hate speech. But yeah, I think also continued government regulation has to hold these social media platforms accountable for not complying with their own policies. But yeah, as also you talked before, we don't know how these algorithms work. There's really not any transparency, and I think it's pretty obvious that major influencers on different platforms, they're their pages are being amplified, and this is having huge consequences, obviously.
Maybe there's a way for us to revisit certain elements of the Section 230 where the actual platforms have this total protection to get out of jail free with no responsibility whatsoever. And now if they're going to like undo fact checking and let the shit run wild, then maybe the original argument from Trump back in the early administration when he went after those platforms and wanted to revoke Section 230 of that Communications Act, he wanted to do that because they were amplifying or censoring messages that were pro-Trump, or they're amplifying messages that were anti-Trump. And so he wanted to take that away to pressure Zuckerberg and the leaders of the other platforms to say, you personally will face a consequence for this. And it didn't work, and everybody supported Section 230. But in reality, right now, if there's no consequence for those leaders and they're just able to just like cash in on it, then I don't know. What are we supposed to do there? I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah, I
ugly.
mean, obviously educating users is the
Lie
ideal
detectors.
way, but also I think like, I mean, really, if you want to think about a younger generation, is really discouraging them from like getting their information primarily from social media platforms and then going back to more traditional methods. But yeah, this is I don't know how realistic this is. So
Well, like we were saying earlier, we could talk to you for hours. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And we would love to have you back on the show. We could dive in a little deeper into some of these stories that you're working on. Most recently, your projects in Syria, Lebanon, and then a really interesting one about the farm workers I think it was in Portugal, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
it would be really interesting to have you back and do more of a deep dive into one particular story. But thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
We really
you.
appreciate it. And I'm
sure,
looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at The Hague at the Movies
yeah,
That Matter Festival. So it's going to be good to see you in person.
yeah. Thanks for having me on, and nice to meet you, Rasheed.
Nice to
Yeah.
meet you
So
too.
Cool.
yeah,
Everybody at home and online, thank you so much for joining into this Disinfo Watch episode. We wanted to take a moment to just thank all the individual people who are part of the crowdfunding efforts to make sure that this community-led information channel and podcast continues to function. It is led by individuals just like yourself, and so you can join that chorus of individuals who believe in this by subscribing to us on Patreon or going to our website and our social media, following, liking, subscribing, and then also supporting us financially. Without that, we would not be able to do the things we're doing, the tools we have, and the platform that we have for many people would just simply not exist. So we thank you all, and we encourage you to share that support with your family and friends and help the chorus grow even larger. We'll be back next week with a full-length interview episode, and then the week after, we'll be back with some more Disinfo. Thanks so much.